Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, the way I always like to start these off is by getting a little bit of the backstory, finding out how you became an entrepreneur, how you got into business, and a little bit about the business that you're doing now.
Okay, well, I got my start like a lot of people probably did, maybe even people in your audience, in ever to walk the earth. I just graduated college and I'd seen an infomercial that Kevin Trudeau was putting on. If you guys remember Kevin Trudeau, he's now in jail. But he was generating leads for his own distributor, like his downline on TV on an infomercial. And I was about ready to graduate in a couple of days from college. And I said, I like this because I didn't really want to do a job my whole life. I'd rather, not have to put up with authority. I just don't like putting up with bosses and stuff. But I knew I'd have to work for a little bit, but I wanted something I could do on the side, and I didn't know anything else to do. This was back before everybody was jumping online and doing what we all do now. I mean, there were people doing it, but it wasn't like it is now. So, long story short, I was the worst distributor in the world. I'm an introverted guy. I'd rather be sitting up in my cave yelling at the Who's down in Whoville like the Grinch or something. I just don't want to put up with people. I don't want to be handing tapes out door to door and all that. But and what basically what happened was that's what I ended up doing. I'd gotten so much debt from buying like these bad leads and everything, and just not being very good at network marketing, that ended up living in an office. It's this little 2 room office. It's kind of a depressing time. It was probably like 4 or 5 or 6 months I was doing this, and I got so desperate I did start handing these like cassette tapes out door to door. This is back in the days of cassette tapes, so there's not like MP3s you could just send people and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'd go door to door to all the businesses in town, and they would just kind of like roll their eyes at me, and nobody ever wanted anything to do it. Nobody wants to deal business with the guy going door to door handing out cassette tapes from MLM. It just doesn't work. So it got pretty bad, and I was one night I was just sitting there in this office, which I was not supposed to be living in, by the way. The landlord's office was conjoined to my office, and he'd come in like around 6, 7 a.m. every day to use the bathroom, which was on my side of the office. And when I say bathroom, we're talking just a toilet and a sink, no shower or anything. So I'd get up early, like 4 or 5 a.m., roll up the covers and blankets and put them away so he doesn't know I'm living there, and run down the street to the gym where I'd play basketball all morning. Come in around 8 o'clock, like I'm just coming in for the day, all refreshed and everything. That was pretty bad. But he one morning I was like 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. What am I doing here? I'm like, God, obviously you did not put me here to be an MLM person. It's just obvious. I'm just, this is not me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I got up and went to the other room, and I was looking at the bookshelf. I had these book of the month books that the MLM company would send me, which were pretty useful. And one of the ones I had read a couple times but didn't really think much about it, called The Seven Lost Secrets of Success by Joe Vitale. It's a great little book. You could read it in one sitting. It's been recently republished. You can get it on Amazon. And it's about this guy named Bruce Barton, who's like the an old school copywriter, marketing genius. Like nobody knows who he is today, but back in the day, early 1900s, the mid 1900s, he was like a household name. He was running for president. He was a congressman, open enemy of like FDR and pro business and all people on Wall Street. The great copywriter John Caples used to like consult with him, from what I understand. Like he was just the man back then. And somewhere like it was 1919, there's a story in the book where it's like 1919. The economy was really bad. It was just after World War I. And this guy came to Bruce Barton in his big city office. He was a salesman out of work. And he came up to Bruce Barton. He said, look, I'm out of work. I need help. What can help me find a job? And this guy apparently had a talent. Like he was known for sales letters. He was an out of work sales manager, but apparently his thing was writing sales letters. And Bruce Barton takes him to the window and says, see all those buildings out there? You're supposed to be good at writing sales letters. Why don't you write a letter selling them? And that story just clicked with me. I didn't even know you could write sales letters. I didn't know what copywriting was, but the idea of being able to sit down and write a letter and not have to talk to a bunch of people and not have to get on the phone and call leads was just like, it was like a wet dream. I mean, it was like awesome. So I got on Google, which was pretty new back then. This is like this was like 2001-ish. I got on Google and looked up copywriting and sales letters, and I started finding guys like Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert, all the big names that people in my world know about. And it was like a rabbit hole from there. And that's what got me started in it. And I haven't looked back since.
Cool. So right now, what's kind of your business model? What's the business that you're in?
Well, I'm in a few different businesses, but my main one that I write on my own blog and everything every day is I teach email copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
I do this in a print newsletter, which is a little weird to some people, but every month people subscribe and I show them how to write emails, how to make more sales like right away. Like, all it takes is one email to boost your sales significantly. Like, oh, I'm a believer. Yeah, so that's what I show people to do most. And I also write emails in other businesses, like I'm in a golf business and some other things, but that's my main thing that people notice my like that's the only thing my face is on.
Gotcha. Okay, so that actually leads me to a good sort of question that one of the actual people in our community asked is why did you choose to do a newsletter versus like an e-course or members area or that kind of thing?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the e stuff at all. It's a very valid way of delivering information. There's a couple. Well, first of all, I'm just biased toward print newsletters. I like writing a print newsletter. It's to me, it's fun. It's just like I like reading newsletters and I like to write it. And if you're going to put something in a format, it's got to be something you enjoy doing. Like if you don't like writing print newsletters, you should never do a print newsletter. You'll hate it. I don't like adding things to a membership site. Like the idea of that just bores me, so I didn't do that. So that's one reason. But there's another reason too. Um, I love email, obviously. Like for me, email is like the eighth wonder of the world, but I don't like it for delivering paid content. And I'll tell you why. It's a very cheap medium. And by that I mean when you get like a Facebook message or a text or an email or a Skype message or some kind of electronic message, your brain rewards you with a little dopamine drip. Makes you feel good. Oh, I got a text. Who's this from? It could be a
Yeah.
spam text, but it doesn't matter. For that split second, direct anything that comes in the mail, like the physical mail that you're expecting, that dopamine drip is amplified like 50 or 100 fold from what I've been told. Like it's a totally different experience. People look forward to getting it. It's not like they're downloading air. They're looking forward to this package coming in the mail. What's he up to this time? Is he going to add a bonus book or is it just what's it going to be?
Mm.
And it I don't know. That's what I'm playing on when I do that. But mostly it's because I have a bias toward writing newsletters. The other, I guess you could say the newsletter thing is my real reason, and the dopamine thing's like the feel good reason. I just tell myself to do it. But so, but it's been working pretty good for almost 5 years. So
Very cool. Now, when you do the newsletter, is it kind of is that something that you're kind of working on the newsletter all month, or is that something that you do like in a few days and then, like how passive is that model? I guess because everybody's always looking for passive income, and that's kind
yeah.
of the big talk.
Well, it's not exactly passive because
Yeah.
it's dependent upon me getting up and doing the work. So it's a nice way of doing things. But ultimately, I should eventually one day I'll outsource it to somebody else. But for I love doing it. Like to me, it's like eating dessert first. But it takes me on average, I can do it in like 1 or 2 days, and that's not like super all day stuff. I'm just a fast writer.
Huh.
I'm a way faster writer than most people probably are. So to me, it doesn't take that long. But sometimes, but at the same time, like this last February, the issue was very different compared to my other issues I used to write. And it wasn't like, oh, here's all these email examples and all that. It was more psychological stuff. And that took me all month off and on, all the way up until like a couple of days before the end of the month. I was sending the printer revised edition. So it really just depends. But on average, it doesn't take me very long, maybe a couple of days, 2, 3 days. But I'm always writing ideas down all the time. So
Yeah. Now I know one of the sort of big philosophies that you have, through being on your list and being in email players is that you believe that people should email daily, right? So
yes.
do you believe that's kind of an across the board sort of philosophy? Do you think is there any businesses that shouldn't email daily, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think everybody, as a general rule, should be emailing daily, unless you just hate writing emails and it's like painful for you and you're going to write crap. you
Uh,
know, I just this last weekend I got accused by somebody on Facebook. I don't know if it was somebody who's a liar or do they just have an axe to grind or what, but like Ben teaches people to send something to mail every day, even if it's crap, which is totally untrue, right? That's like the opposite of what I teach. So I think you should do daily. I think that it's easier than most people think.
uh-huh.
And once you get into it, you start seeing sales come in. And a lot, I mean, this is just me, but a lot of people I teach are like, man, I kind of like doing this now.
Uh-huh.
It's fun. It's like, it's something you like look forward to. I'm not saying every day is like easy and everything, but you get it down to your workday down to 15 or 20 minutes, just write it and send an email. That's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Now, so me personally, I try to do daily emails. It's something that I've really strived to do, strove to do. I don't know, but I really struggle to have ideas of something to write about every day. So, I mean, do you have any sort of tips or strategies to kind of keep that hopper full and to kind of always have ideas to write about?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you an example. Now, this is kind of a weird example, probably, but I think it helps people understand. So for the last over a little over a year now, I've been learning this thing called Wing Chun Kung Fu.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's one of 400 different types of Kung Fu, but it's the one I picked. And very early on, when I was learning this, my Sifu says, "Look, Ben, whenever you run into a problem with this, whenever you're not here and I can't correct you on something, just remember the answer is always in the form. Now the form is this series of movements you go through every day if you're practicing it properly. It's not combat application stuff. It's just a series of movements with your arms and legs, and but every movement you do in Wing Chun can be traced to that form.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always there. So it's like if I have a question about, am I doing this right? I go back to the form. Well, yeah, that's the right way to do it, or that's the wrong way to do it. When it comes to writing emails every day, it's the same thing, except instead of the form, you want to go back to your market. You want to do a very intense study of your market and your customers. You want to know all the things that scare them, all the things that excite them, all the things they're worried about, the things that keep them up at night, the things that are in the news that are relevant to them, the TV shows they watch, anything you can find out about your market. The more you know about that, you have this unlimited bag of fodder to
Mm-hmm.
jump. Like, let's say there's what market are you? What's one of the markets you sell in? We'll do this as an example.
One of the markets I sell in. So
Yeah.
I have a course that teaches content marketing strategies and blogging strategies.
Okay. So bloggers have their own set of like angst. like one of their angst is how do I with content, right? So you can write a blog post all day long about ways to come up with content. That's one example. Like, I'll give you another example, more consumer market.
Uh-huh.
So I used to sell in the weight loss niche, and I would just go there and I would talk to overweight females, and I would ask, how does this feel? How does this struggle? Like, what does it feel like? You get all kinds of answers. Like, man, I'm always sad all the time. Yeah, it's just a sadness. And this is just one example. This one girl's like, I'm just sad all the time. I can't get this to work. And then they go into all these other things. I know people are laughing at me. My husband's wishing I'd lose weight. See, every single one of those things is an email. And you never run out of ideas if you just know your market.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I think I already know your answer to this, but I'm going to ask it because one of the group members asked it. But how often do you send an email that's a pitch versus how often do you send an email that's content? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that teach that you should be sending to a lot of content and then occasionally pitch versus always pitching. What are your philosophies on that?
Okay, well, I think that if you're gonna just send an email send only pitch once in a while and send a bunch of content, as long as you can afford not making the maximum amount of money you should be making, keep doing that because you're robbing yourself. Now, that said, I'm not one of these guys who should just pitch every day. I don't think you should just blatant pitching like, oh, look what this thing is today. No, it's got to be a mixture of both. Like, I think you should give content and a pitch in every email. So there's a balance there. That's why I'm saying you have a conversation with. Now, let's go back to our weight loss example.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I'm talking to an overweight female in the weight loss niche, and she's like, my Facebook friends are. I'm trying to lose weight right now. I'm exercising. I'm eating better. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to make this work. And my friends, my so-called friends, who are just passive aggressive bitches, basically, and this is a real life story, are tagging my heavy Facebook pictures on purpose on Facebook because they know it's like that's their way of trying to keep me down or whatever their motivations are. That is an email. That what I just told you right there is an email that I wrote that sold a lot of our product. And when I got out of the weight loss niche, I let this friend of mine who's one of the highest selling affiliates in the weight loss niche. I mean, he's just one of the top affiliates in the entire weight loss niche. I say, go ahead and use it. So he used it, just changed the details around to his product. And he said it gave him like the highest response during a launch. And all these other affiliates who usually do better than him, not like there's a whole bunch, but there's all these other guys that sometimes because they have bigger lists and stuff. He said they were just killing all those guys with that email. And there's no magic to it. There's no genius. I simply told the story about that, which is the content. It's not how-to thing, but you're just getting in sync with the market. Say, look, I know what you're going through, and then tell that story, and then I've got something to help you with this. Bam! It's that simple. So it's a mixture of content, telling stories, telling people what they're doing wrong,
Mm-hmm.
telling people like what's going on in the world right now. How does this relate to your life? That it doesn't. It's not hard how-to content. We're not talking about hard. Here's what's in my product. Give you. I don't recommend you do that. But you just have a conversation with them, and then get in sync with them, and then say, look, I've got something that can help you with this problem. I'll give you another example. I just wrote this email. I'm going to be presenting at this health profit summit thing next month
Uh-huh.
in Denver. And they wanted me to write about email, how to sell supplements with email and stuff. My experience with that is way more limited than it used to be. Like I've only done that for one product that I sold in the prostate niche, and I wanted to make sure that I could do something that's going to help other people too. It wasn't just me.
Hmm.
So I have a friend who sells supplements, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, will you guys send like if I write an email for one of your health products, I don't care which one it is. Will you send it to like 5,000 people and just let me know how it goes? I don't need to get paid on it or anything. Worst case is nothing happens and you sent an email. Best case is you guys made some money. Now you have an email you can use again and again." So I said, pick a product. He said, well, this product about blood sugar hasn't been selling too well. How about that one? I said, all right. So I told the story not about, oh, I have a hot new blood sugar supplement or diabetes thing, because you can't really say these things anyway. You can't like mention diabetes all.
Right.
So I told the story about this comedian named Patrice O'Neill who died in 2011 because of complications of diabetes, which was brought about by his blood sugar. It's all in this Rolling Stones article that I read. I just told the story about how he had this guy, this famous comedian, on the just at the best time of his life. I mean, he was about ready to like launch to become one of the biggest comedians ever, and he died early. And the problem was he'd had blood sugar problems his whole life. Even when he was like in his early 20s, it was as high as like 500, which is pretty bad, And he's had diabetes his whole life. And I went through all the symptoms of like what high blood sugar will do to you. And then I talked about how, and then one day he woke up and he couldn't move his legs. And he called his girlfriend in a panic, probably. And then eventually later that day, he couldn't move his arms or anything else. Eventually, he couldn't even blink. And he was in a paralyzed state where he was locked in his own body, where he was aware of everyone around him, but he couldn't talk, couldn't move, can't do anything. He's just aware. Like it's almost like a corpse, but with a soul inside it. And it's like I couldn't think of a more miserable way of existing. Like you're basically an amoeba. And he died like a few days after that. But it was like, this is what happens if you don't keep your blood sugar under control. And you know what? I put some stuff, I'm talking in the voice of the doctor. I put together, some information with natural ways of dealing with this, and it's at this link. And I just got the results from my email today, and they said it got more sales than they usually get,
Hmm.
and it way less unsubscribes, which isn't a big deal to me if you get unsubscribes. But they said the engagement was way higher, and so it works. And that's it. There's no content. I just told a story about something that happened to someone.
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost kind of like rethinking the way you look at content instead of trying to send people to blog posts and that sort of thing. It's essentially the content is the email itself. You're entertaining them
Yeah.
and putting the content right in the email and then linking them to where they can go and get something for sale instead of linking them off to more content or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you what. You bring up a very good point. And hardcore bloggers probably don't want to hear what I have to say. Okay. But if you just embrace it and run with it, I think you'll just test it for yourselves. I mean, you just by all means. And I've done this, and I know a few other people who have done this, because back, not more than like 5 or 6 years ago, it was very common to send a teaser email to get you to a blog. Like that was the way everybody was doing it. And I went the opposite way based on some stuff I learned from guys like, for example, Matt Fury, who I consider the email king.
Uh-huh.
You just put all the content in the email, and there's a lot of psychology to this, because people like take fast food delivery or food delivery. People would rather have it delivered to them than go get takeout. It's like it's weird, but we're so lazy now that clicking a link is like, oh, it's like an extra thing to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know people who have tested this. I've tested this, and it's like if you're selling something, the difference in sales like day, simply because you just take your blog post that you're already writing. I'm not saying don't write blog posts. I'm saying write the email and then put it on your blog. Now your blog attracts traffic from Google and stuff. People get to see what it's all about. But the selling is really done in the email if you're doing it the way I do it, at least.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that actually kind of leads to another question that popped up that I think is a good sort of segue, and that's like length of email. Have you found that there's a specific length that's sort of optimal, or does it really matter as long as the content's being delivered? And you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, there's no rule of thumb as far as I know on this. It's kind of like you just say what you have to say. Ideally, I love my emails to be less than 250 words just because of attention spans. But that doesn't mean I won't write emails that are almost 2,000 words. If like last Saturday I wrote this really long email in response to that Facebook thing I was telling you about. And, it was like 2,000 words. That's where the guy like accused me of, that was one of many comments of people kind of like not attacking me, but disagree with me about something I said in an email. I took that, all their comments, which were all horse crap as far as like they didn't know what they were talking about. And I put them in my email and I addressed each one by one. And then I tied, excuse me, I tied it into getting my email players newsletter for because this month just so coincidentally happens to be about list building,
Uh-huh.
and they were disagreeing with me about lists. So I did that. It was a very long email, and I got like 4 or 5 extra sales that I never would have got otherwise. So yeah, it was a long email, and people who read it to the very end are very good prospects. But that's not the norm. I'd rather keep them shorter. But yeah, you could make them long. It's fine as long as they're interesting. It's here's the rule of thumb. There is a rule. I told you there's no rule of thumb. There's a rule of thumb. If you're boring, 10 words is too much. If you're interesting, 10,000 words is fine.
Uh-huh.
If you're interesting, as long as you don't bore people, you're good.
Cool. Yeah. So this next question you kind of already answered. It's kind of a almost a rewording of another question, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you consistently find new ways to promote the same exact product over and over and over again? Because there's some people that only have one core product that's all they're really promoting. How do they email that same product every single day?
It's a great question. And by the way, I think it's a good idea to only sell one product at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a big fan. If you get the opt-in, you sell them one flagship product, and then after that, you can sell them multiple different things. But it just there's a lot of psychology behind that. But it's just going back to your market every day. Go back to your market. Go back to your product and your market. I mean, they both. I say the market, but the product too. You should know your product very well. You should always be thinking of ways that your product can help your market. Talk about the market, the problem they have. Say, hey, I've got something in this product on page 5 or on 1 hour in if it's a video, whatever it is, and just keep doing that. But just keep going back to your market. You'll never run out of things to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, if you have, let's say you have a service business, let's say you are a web designer and you're trying to land clients for a service, would you do anything differently in that scenario than if you were promoting like an info business?
No, in fact, this is another question I get all the time. People are like, "Hey, I want to join your newsletter, but I'm in this business, or I'm trying to get clients." So it's all the same. I've yet to see anything that's not the same. Now, the call to action is different. Like, for example, you're a web designer, you still write about people who are having web design problems, or like tell a story about someone who, for some reason, they can't get a file to go up onto their website, and they're using Fetch. I'm just using this as an example because it happened to someone I know recently, and it turns out she's using one of these like funnel services, which in her case you couldn't put your own pages up.
Uh-huh.
I would write an email about that and say, well, here's how you can get around that in my product or in my service. I can show you how to get around that. So you just talk about the frustrations and the problems of the market or the things they want, and you say, hey, here's how I can show you how to do that, deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. If it was a product, I'd write the exact same email. I'd say it's in my XYZ product and how to do this.
Right, right.
But I'll say this: when you're selling a service, you can get away with telling more.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need to tease as much because, for example, if I was doing, I don't do freelance copywriting anymore, but when I did, I have no problem giving stuff away in an email that I would not normally do if it was an info product because they don't want to do it themselves. They want confidence that I'm the right person to do it. So I'm not saying go crazy. You always want to make your emails fun and readable
Mm-hmm.
and easy to digest. Don't get too crazy, but you can give away more of information than you would normally than if it was information.
Right. So basically, if it was like an information product, maybe your emails should kind of tell stories, use case studies, kind of tell them what to do, but not how to do it, and then you sell them the how to do it. Where if you're selling services, you can actually teach them how to do it, and then assume they're going to want to purchase your services to have that you do it for them, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to do it. I just don't want to go. I wouldn't go too crazy with the how tos, but you can. Like for example, I used to write all these articles back when I was taking clients. I wrote all these articles for easyarticles.com, which are also emails I sent out, and I would say, do this trick where you put some credibility and then a big claim and then some credibility under that, like sandwich it between it. To the average copywriter, they'll say, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I would normally not go that far in what I would say, but if I'm trying to sell myself as a copywriter, I'd say, tell your copywriter to do that. Or if you want to hire me, give me a call or go to this link, whatever. So, it's the same. It's just a little bit different, but the psychology is the exact same. Talk about the problems and all that.
Now, when it comes to like metrics, this is something that from me reading your emails and your newsletter, I've kind of had a completely different sort of shift in focus because I was always getting so frustrated by opens and clicks. Well, for
Yeah.
me, I was actually seeing a lot of opens and almost like no clicks, and that was my big frustration. And after reading a lot of your stuff, that kind of got me to completely shift my mindset on that. Can you speak into that and sort of your philosophy on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, really, what matters at the end of the day is ROI.
Mm-hmm.
You sent an email out. Did it bring money in? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'll give you an example. The one I wrote about the blood sugar for my friends, right? So he sent me the metrics today. I had less opens and less clicks than I normally get, but more sales,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like less unsubscribes. So do I care if the opens were less? I mean, I really don't care. I just know it got more sales. And that is not that uncommon, by the way. So I'm not saying opens are not worth checking. I mean, if you like doing, I don't really worry about it too much, but there are good reasons to do it. Like for example, just to gauge the overall health of your list every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you suddenly see your opens drop to like 2%, and you're usually getting 20%, there's probably a problem with your autoresponder on a blacklist
Yeah.
or something. It's good to know it, like especially if you're selling day to day and like you have employees that mouths to feed and all that, and you need to really know this stuff. Or if you want to test out product ideas, you could split test a subject line to two different parts of your list. Whichever gets the most opens is probably the better title.
Uh-huh.
So there are reasons to do it. Sometimes people think I'm anti metrics. I'm not. To me, sales, like if email's my game and my sport, sales is the scoreboard, not this other stuff. So, yeah, it's just to me. I put an email out? Did money come in? At the end of this month, do I have more customers than I did last month? At this time, that's what I gauge. I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. I'm just a very simple guy, and I don't like getting bogged down in all that stuff. But I also know there's a lot of people geek out with numbers, and God bless them. I mean, you can use those numbers. Just remember, at the end of the day, sales is what's putting food on the table, not the clicks and opens.
Yeah. Now, do you do any segmenting on your list? Do you segment buyers out from just the leads and make sure certain emails only go to certain people? How much of that do you do for your list?
Yeah, well, not at my where I'm selling email players. I don't really do it because I like everyone to see me demonstrate what they're learning on my customers. Every day they get to see me demonstrate what they're learning in the newsletter, and I get to tease them about what's coming next month. So yeah, in my case, which is a very rare case, I don't. And usually the only back end selling I do is through direct mail. I put an offer in the envelope that's already going to them. I don't actually email that list very much, the back end. That said, every other company I've ever dealt with, yes, you,
Yeah.
you segment the crap out of people. Like, the more the merrier. I mean, like you can never, I don't think you can over segment a list. And, I know it sounds like a weird thing, but, segmentation is very powerful. It's what the whole direct mail industry is based on. So, yes, definitely segment.
Yeah. So with the email players list, you pretty much send out the same emails to both buyers and just leads. But for most businesses, you wouldn't recommend. But just because the nature of you teaching email marketing, it just kind of
Yeah,
makes sense for that list to kind of keep them seeing everything you're doing.
absolutely. Now, I have a podcast too. We have
Mm-hmm.
daily emails going. I don't write those. One of my students does. And she's like one of my email player subscribers, and we pay her a percentage of the sales to write emails every day. She at the moment is having to write for different products all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't have just one product yet. We're working on that. But right now she writes whatever she feels like selling
Mm-hmm.
that day. And we have them set the shopping cart apparently has them the buyers segmented out, but we're working on like putting them in the autoresponder segmented. So if they bought product A, they go on one list, product B. Because technically, if we, she, in that case, don't really need to be sending buyers of product A something they already bought. Now, they like reading her emails anyway. So if you do email right, they want to hear from you anyway. It's not like, oh, I already bought this. Screw you. You might get a person like that every now and then, but mostly they're reading because they like you, your personality. So yeah, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But ideally, we want to segment more
Now,
than we
now
have.
with the podcast, what is the goal with the podcast? Does that drive more people to email players? Is that kind of the main thing that does? Is it just kind of like another way to broadcast your message secondary to email?
Yeah, it's actually a separate entity from my main site. Like I don't control the domain, my producer does, and we split everything 50-50. I just kind of show up because I don't want to deal with the technical stuff, and he has a team together and all that. Um, the it does bring people to awareness to email players because actually when they opt in, they get the first issue of email players free as a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
But it's its own entity with its own goals and it. Like to me, I talked to this guy a few years ago. His name is Danny Eine,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know Dan or not, but brilliant guy, just brilliant guy. Just he's just at a mastermind of ours recently. Just brilliant guy. I mean, all around. And I'm at the time I used to think the money's in the list, the money's in the list, right? Now I realize the money's in the list, but the fortune is in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to have a huge audience. They may be on your list, they may not be, but the podcast, the whole idea was to build a bigger audience overall of people who would not find me otherwise. And so now it's kind of turned into its own entity with its own product line and all that. That's fine. I'm all about multiple streams of income. I like the idea of that there's a whole other stream of income that's not dependent on my social security number or my merchant account or my name. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
completely separate. So
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, I mean that's kind of been a big focus of this podcast is to really focus on building that audience, and once you build that audience, you can pretty much put anything in front of that audience and plug different things in and see what works. So I love that. Now the kind of last sort of thing that came up when I was asking the audience what they wanted to hear about was maybe some list building tips, some list building strategies. How do you focus on building a list?
oh man, I'm a big fan of Facebook advertising.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately I was kicked off of Facebook for reasons that didn't have anything to do with the reasons for doing it. It was just one of those things. The Facebook gods were finicky that day. I could try to get back on, but screw them. It's just too much work. I use AdWords. I use
Uh-huh.
Google AdWords. Besides that, I would say most of the best traffic I get comes from just doing interviews like this.
Oh yeah.
Anyone who's sitting through a half hour or an hour interview and then takes the time to go to my site and opt in is a very, very good lead. You don't get as many in it. You can't scale it, but this is one of my favorite ways to do it. It's like it solves so many problems, like
Yeah.
credibility and demonstration. It's all there. People after this interview, they know whether they want to check my stuff out or not. I don't have to tell them. I don't have to sell them anything. They'll get in or they won't. And if they do, hopefully they'll want to buy something. If they don't, it was a good lead. And
Yeah.
so I like doing that. I like I'm not really an SEO guy. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I just don't really want to mess with it. But there's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways you could take an interview that you do. Like, let's say I was interviewing you.
Uh-huh.
You could take that interview, transcribe it, hand it to three different professional writers, and tell each of them, look, turn this into 5 articles. And they're all going to give you different articles. Now you've got 15 articles you can go put up on the internet somewhere
Yeah.
at minimal cost. So there's so many ways to do it. But my main one is doing interviews like this in AdWords.
Yeah, yeah. So when you do AdWords, what do you drive them to?
A squeeze page.
Just a squeeze page. Okay.
Yeah, it's a splash squeeze page. Like they have the opportunity to not opt in
Uh-huh.
and just go right into the blog if they want. It's set up to be very Google friendly. The guy who runs it and everything is a friend of mine. He's a computer scientist, and he really understands how Google works because he's been kicked off Google in the past, and he got back on, and Google likes him and everything. So you make it. You just what they really want is 100% transparency.
Hmm.
Like you can never be too transparent with your site if you're running AdWords. I literally make they can't just opt in, for example. They have to check a box saying, I acknowledge I'm going to get daily promotional emails from Ben Settle. I cannot be more transparent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get a higher quality lead too, is they come in knowing that you're going to mail them every, no, you're mailing me too much. They know it. Like you checked the box. You couldn't even opt in until you checked the box. So
Yeah.
it's like the page is set up so that it looks like a real business. There's a buy now button. There's a about us thing. It's not like your typical squeeze page where usually I want them to take one action, opt in.
Uh-huh.
You kind of got to play the game and put some stuff up there, but it
Yeah,
works
yeah.
pretty well.
Very cool. Very cool. So there's just a couple little last questions that I always ask. Do you have any book recommendations that you find yourself telling people to check out frequently? Either on this topic or just kind of overall favorite books.
Yeah, one of my I mentioned Seven Lost Secrets to Success by Joe Vitale, which I think is just a great book, especially if you're doing. It's not about email, but there's so many lessons in there for the emailer.
Right.
And also, Obvious Adams is one of my favorites. It's in public domain. You can find it on Google. It teaches you a different. It was written in 1916 about this guy who came up from working in a grocery store to become the vice president of like this huge ad agency. And there's nothing sexy about this guy, nothing brilliant about him. He wasn't bright. He wasn't like overly intelligent. He just knew how to find the obvious solutions to a problem. And it was funny because people apparently of heads of major corporations back then had read this like 16-page story, and they wanted to hire Obvious Adams. They thought he was a real person. But he's just he was a fictional guy. So it's a very powerful, like it's really good just for the overall business and advertising and stuff. So
Very cool. And then where do you want people to go after this interview? Where do you like to send people? What's kind of your main site?
well, if you like listening to podcasts, ours is just audio, but it's bensettleshow.com. And if you go there, I'll give you the first issue of my email players newsletter. It's a PDF. It's a print newsletter, but I give you the PDF for the first issue. That's a retail $97 value. That's what people pay every month. And it shows you 24 ways to make more money with email, like right away. I've
Hmm.
had people tell me they've made thousands, and in one case, tens of thousands of dollars just using that free issue. So it's all yours free. Use it, test it, see if I'm full of crap or not on your own. Very easy to test that stuff out.
Very cool. Well, I'm a email player subscriber. I'm on your emails are. I'm subscribed to a lot of emails. Most of them auto archive. Your emails are actually one of the ones I still read on a daily basis.
Nice. Thank you.
So definitely everybody needs to go check out all of your stuff. And I really appreciate you taking the time and joining me on the show today.
I appreciate you having me on, Matt. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you.